Fine. So let's start today's session. In the last class, we have started discussing about 5 important steps towards successful or effective writing. And in the last class, we have covered very first step, that is preparation. So anybody who can tell me what are the 5 steps those we have listed in the last class for successful writing? Yes, anybody? Please speak up.
For successful writing, preparation, research, organization, revision, and writing.
Yes. So we have identified 5 important steps. If we follow these steps, it is possible for us to come up with a good document, effective technical document, right? Under those, we have identified 5 steps. Those are preparation, research, organization, writing, and revision. In the last class, we have seen the very first step, that is preparation. So today we are going to focus upon the remaining steps. So we have gone through preparation, and I hope you must have understood the tasks those we need to perform under preparation. So we have identified few tasks those we need to perform under preparation, right? Now today we'll be focusing upon the next step towards writing, and that is research. So once again, while researching on the topic that we have selected for writing, we need to undergo specific tasks. So very first task is brainstorming. In fact, why research is important? Whenever we write some technical document, we are about to write we are about to write the information or the details regarding some complex task, some complex subject. And unless we understand that subject thoroughly, it may not be possible for us to come up with good writing. And that is why we need to understand that topic first. And that is why we need to undergo the step that is called as research. So we should undertake adequate research while writing. So in carrying out research, the very first task that we may think of is brainstorming. So what we mean by brainstorming? It is a form of free association used to generate ideas about the topic. So it can be individual brainstorming, or the brainstorming can be undertaken under the groups. So usually, say for example, you are preparing a document for your project proposal. So obviously, you must be having a group of students, those who are going to work on a particular topic, particular project. So in that situation, you may brainstorm among the group, or it is possible that individually you can have brainstorming. So brainstorming can stimulate creative thinking, and it may come up with some fresh perspectives, some fresh ideas about the topic. So brainstorming is really very important. So while brainstorming, whatever are the new ideas, those come into mind, we need to note down those ideas. Right? So brainstorming can be carried out individually or in groups. right? And typically brainstorming, as I stated, it stimulates the creative thinking. It comes up with fresh perspectives to the topic. It creates new ideas. So we need to once again follow some tasks while brainstorming. So first of all, whatever are the ideas, those come into mind, we need to note down the ideas. Right? So whatever are the ideas, note down those ideas. Then ask few questions for each idea that you have noted down. What are those questions? The questions are like what, when, who, where, how, why, and so on. Right? So for each idea that you have noted down, right, ask these questions with respect to each idea. So what is the idea? What actually is the purpose behind that? Who can use that? How to implement that? Why it is important? Where it can be utilized? So ask different kinds of questions like this for each idea. Whenever you are asking these kinds of questions with respect to each idea, what happens is you may come up with the additional details about those ideas. So once again, list out those additional details about the ideas. Okay, and these details you are going to get whenever you ask these questions with respect to these ideas. Now, after detailing those ideas, you should analyze these ideas. Right? Now, sometimes it may happen whenever you are listing out first time these ideas, there are some redundant ideas. So it may happen that you might have used different words or phrases while listing out those ideas, but ultimately these ideas are same, right? So if there are any redundant ideas, then you should discard those redundant ideas. So discard redundancy. Okay, now next, once you are done with listing of these ideas, then group those ideas in a logical way, in a logical order. Right? So grouping in logical order can be based upon the purpose that you have identified in step number 1, or the need of the audience that you have once again identified in step number 1. So based on that, you should group logically whatever are the ideas those you have listed down. Okay, and finally, with all those ideas, you should come up with a tentative outline of your document. Right? Now, while doing all this, right, brainstorming, you are having now some ideas, right? Those you have listed down. With respect to the topic and the ideas those you have listed down, you should conduct the research now, actual research. So there are several ways of conducting the research. You may have a primary research, or you may have a secondary research. So let us see now what is primary research and what is secondary research. Primary research refers to gathering of raw data that is compiled from some interviews or the data that is compiled from some direct observations, the data that is obtained from various surveys, or the data from actual experiments, or the data that is being collected with the help of some questionnaires. So you may prepare the questionnaires, right? So under primary research, we are going to collect some raw data by means of some interviews, some direct observations, some surveys, experiments, the data collected by some questionnaires from the people, some audio or video material available related to that topic, right? So by making use of all those modalities, whatever data you collect, that comes under the primary research. What about secondary research now? Secondary research refers to gathering the information that has been already analyzed, that has already been assessed, evaluated, compiled, right? And that is available in some accessible form. So such sources of secondary research may include referring to books, some research papers, or some articles, some technical documents or reports, some web documents, some websites, some blogs, some email discussions, and something like that, right? So all the information or the data collected, like using all those different modalities, may be thought of the secondary research. So in secondary research, actually we are gathering the information, but we are referring to the material that has already been analyzed, assessed, evaluated by somebody, the data that has been systematically compiled by somebody. So we may refer to some review articles, some books, some research papers, and so on, right? So we may conduct the research. Maybe it is a primary research, secondary research, or we may use the modalities under both. Okay, and we should, following this step, we should come up with some raw data related to the ideas those were generated and related to the topic under consideration. Then let us talk about one important concept while researching, and that is the plagiarism. So what is plagiarism? It is the use of someone else's unique ideas without acknowledgement. Or in other words, we may say that the use of someone else's exact words without quotation marks or without giving appropriate credit to the person or the document that we are referring to. So always we should avoid such kind of plagiarism. Your document should be original. So you should come up with your own content. And if you are referring to somebody else's ideas or content, then you should properly cite that reference. You should properly give credit to that material or the person. Otherwise, it is considered as a theft of someone else's creative and intellectual property. Right? And if in your writing, if such kind of a plagiarism is found, then this is actually the offense. So you should not have such kind of plagiarism or copying from some other resource. And if you are using some material from other resources, you should properly give credit to that document or that person. So plagiarism is not accepted in any business, science, journalism, any academic documents, nowhere. So plagiarism is strictly prohibited. It should not be used, or we should not find any plagiarism in our documents, right? There are certain tools to check the plagiarism from the documents. We are going to talk about these tools later. But please keep in mind that whatever you write, do not copy as it is from somewhere without acknowledging that document or that reference. Okay, see here, if you look at this particular slide, whatever are the 5 steps those we are talking about, these 5 steps simply I am communicating it to you. These 5 steps are not designed by me on my own, and that is why from where I have adopted the material, from where I have referred this material, I have provided here the reference. I have given the credit to that particular resource that I am using. Right? So I am not having any plagiarism here because I am giving proper credit to the book from where I am referring to this material. Right.
Yes, ma'am.
So one more important point that we should consider under research, and that is the sources of information, right? So in fact, we have touched upon all these sources earlier, but once again, I'll be listing out here the sources of information. So the very important source of information is your own knowledge about the topic, or the knowledge of your colleague or your teammate, right? So first of all, whenever we seek for any sources of information, first thing is whatever information, whatever knowledge you have about that topic, about the ideas, that is the first source of information. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, you may have the interviews of the stakeholders or the people who are going to, say for example, who are going to use that product, whatever are their needs. So you need to interview the people, those are concerned with that topic. And with the help of those interviews, it is possible for you to come up with the information, to gather the information. Also, other sources of information are like you may use the libraries, library resources. You may use various databases where indexing of lots of documents, lots of articles is available. You may use the books. You may use the research papers, as I stated, or the articles or the technical reports. You may use the material that is available on the websites, the blogs. You may refer to some printed or electronic sources. Those are available at your workplace. Various correspondence reports, various intranet documents, those are available in your premises. All that material you may explore, you may use to complete your research with respect to the topic. Now, once you have done with your research, once you have gathered enough material related to your topic, then what next? The next step is really very important, and that is organization. So after researching, after collecting the information related to your topic, related to your ideas, you are supposed to structure your information whatever data that you have collected in a manner such that it would be very easy to read that document. Right? So to organize the information effectively, you need to determine the best way to structure your ideas. Right? So there are several methods of developing or organizing, structuring the data that you have. Few of such methods are the sequential method or the chronological method. So what we mean by that? So whichever method that we need to use depends upon what kind of document that we are writing. Let us assume that you are writing a document and that document is actually providing some instructions to assemble some gadget or to assemble some equipment. So if this is the document that you are writing, then you should follow the method that is sequential method of development. What it means, whenever you are trying to assemble something, you are providing the instructions one after another. So unless you complete first instruction, you need not proceed to the next instruction. And that is how the sequential method of documentation comes up. Right? So if you are writing such kind of a document where the steps really matter or the sequence of steps really matter, then go with that kind of method. You may have chronological method. So what we mean by that? Suppose you are writing a review or there is one section in your project proposal that deals with, say, technical review or literature review. So under that chapter or under that section, you may prefer to use chronological method of development. What it means? In literature review, actually, we are summarizing or we are writing the efforts, earlier efforts related to that particular topic, right? So whenever you are exploring the earlier efforts by other people and whenever you are commenting on that material or the existing systems, then it is better to follow the chronological method. Meaning what happened in 80s, what happened in 90s with respect to that particular topic. Likewise, you may mention the efforts of the people in chronological order, right? So that is one kind of method that you may use. So as I stated, depending upon whatever is the document or what kind of document you are writing, select the appropriate method, right, for developing your structure. Okay, next important point is outline your notes and ideas. So you have come up with the ideas, you have taken the notes, right? Now what you are trying to do is you are trying to structure your thinking. You are trying to structure your thinking. And while structuring your thinking, while structuring your ideas, it should be logical, right? So outlining actually breaks the large or complex subject into manageable parts. I'll repeat, outlining breaks large or complex subjects into manageable parts. So it enables you actually to emphasize the key points by placing these points at appropriate positions with respect to the relative importance of that particular topic. So typically in outlining, you decide The chapter scheme, maybe if you are writing a report. So you may decide the chapters, which would be chapter 1, 2, 3, something like that. You may decide upon the sections under these chapters. You may decide upon the subsections under those chapters and so on. So this is how actually you should come up with the outline. Right? So by structuring your thinking at an early stage, a well-developed outline actually ensures that your document will be complete. It will be logically organized, right? And it will allow you to focus exclusively on writing whenever you proceed for the next step of writing the rough draft, right? While organizing your document, also you need to think of whether there is a need to include some kind of visuals, some kinds of photographs, some kinds of tables. If yes, you need to develop and integrate such kinds of diagrams. You need to develop the visuals. You need to prepare the photographs, those you would like to integrate into your document, right? Also, consider the layout and design as I stated earlier, right? So likewise, you should come up with the scheme, how you are going to organize, how you are going to write your document, right? So once you are ready with your outline, once you have organized in a manner how you are supposed to write the document, then actually proceed for the next step, and that is actual writing the very first rough draft of your document. So the fourth step is to prepare a rough draft of your document. So this fourth step that we are going to explore next is writing. Now, as I mentioned, in writing, initially you are creating a rough draft, right? So while writing your very first draft, you really need to consider the point of view. So select appropriate point of view. So what I mean by this point of view, it is actually the writer's relation to the information presented as reflected in the use of grammatical person. So you are aware of the person, grammatical person. I am talking about now some grammar. Right? So we may have the first person, or we may write in second or third person, right? So you have learned all those language details actually in your school days, right? So simply I'm revising few of the things. So first person, if you are writing in first person, then it indicates that the writer is a participant or an observer. I'll repeat. If you are using first person, if you are writing in first person, then it indicates that the writer is a participant or an observer. If you choose to use second or third person, it indicates that the writer is giving some directions, the writer is giving some instructions or advice, right? So depending upon the need, you may select the person, grammatical person. Let me give you few examples. If I'm writing in first person, then my statement would be like, if I'm using first person, then my statement may be like, I scrolled down to find the settings option. So this is the first person. Okay. If I want to use second person, then how I'm going to write? I'm going to write it like you need to scroll down. You need to scroll down. Right? If I'm using third person, I'll be using he scrolled down to find the settings option. Right? So you may write the document in first person, second or third person. Now there are some hints. If you are writing an email to some associate, or if you are writing an email to your teammate, then obviously you need to use the personal point of view, right? But if you are writing in a report and that report is addressing a large group, then obviously it is not a good idea to use the first person, but instead you should be impersonal. So the point of view, if you are writing a report that is addressing a large group, then it is better that impersonal point of view is used. Right? So when subject matter is important, do not use personal point of view. I'll repeat, if subject matter is important, do not use personal point of view. Instead, be impersonal. Right? And many times we need to be impersonal while writing the technical reports. Okay? Now, you are writing a rough draft now, right? So first point that we considered is the point of view in which you are supposed to write. Now, we should concentrate on converting our outline that we have prepared in organization step. So we should consider converting our outline into sentences and paragraphs. Right? So we should explore now whatever is the section, whatever is the subsection that we have identified in the outline. Now, under that section, under that subsection or chapter, we are supposed to write now some sentences or paragraphs related to that. Right? So concentrate now on the idea that or the matter that you are going to write now under that particular title, under that particular section, right? Do not be concerned with the choice of words that you are using. If by chance you are very good in English and it is possible for you to select the appropriate words to narrate that particular concept, it is really good. But don't waste your time at this phase. Don't waste your time in selecting the appropriate words. Simply jot down the idea first in the form of sentence and in the form of a paragraph. How to convert that draft into more readable or more attractive one, that will be taken care of in the next phase, and that is revision. So while drafting your first draft of the document, you focus upon exploring or writing your ideas into the sentences and the paragraphs. Okay. What next? Use effective construction of sentences. Use effective paragraphs. Now, one important hint that I am providing here. Whenever you write any document, usually the first point in the document is introduction. So whenever, suppose you are writing a formal project report or you are writing a proposal for the project, the first point that you have listed is introduction to the topic. But my advice is, even though in your outline, this is the first point that you are having, that is introduction. At the end of the writing, actually, you try to write your introduction. I'll repeat. Writing an introduction should be considered at last. And the reason is, at the last of the writing, you will be knowing more precisely about the body of the draft that already is been written by you. And that is why it becomes easy to write introduction at the end of the document, even though it is the first point in actual technical document. You fill up this part at the end. Okay. Also, after writing the introduction at the end, actually, right, even though it is sequentially the first point in your document, you do not write it at first. First write the body of the document and then write the introduction. And finally, you should come up with a conclusion. Right? So conclusion should actually tie all the main ideas together. So conclusion actually should summarize all the main points, those you have mentioned in your document. If it is a technical report, your conclusion should address findings of all the objectives. Right? So with respect to whatever are the objectives, with respect to every objective, you should have some comment, some remark in your conclusion. Right? Also, choose an appropriate title for your document. Selecting appropriate title is really very important. The reason is, many readers actually decide whether to read the document based on the title. So if the title is really good, if the title is indicating its scope and purpose, whether the title is indicating the topic, then probably the readers would be more interested to read the document. And that is why while selecting the title, we should select the title appropriately that will reflect actually the topic, the scope and the purpose in brief. So if title is attractive, then only the readers will tempt to read that document. So it is really very important, right? So after writing your first draft of your document, then we need to undergo several revisions of that document. At very first attempt, it rarely happens that the document is really foolproof. Many times we need to undergo the revisions of the document, and that is why the last step in technical writing is revision. Let us look at now important tasks those we need to consider in revision. Right? So now your first draft is ready with you. Rough draft is ready with you. So now you need to focus upon few important details so that your document is really effective, really good to read. So check for unity, coherence and conciseness and also the pace. So I'll simply briefing you about these words one by one. What is unity? Unity actually is a singleness of purpose and focus. So whatever paragraphs, those we are writing in our document, those should be unified. It means that whatever is the central idea, whatever is the idea that we are trying to focus upon, one paragraph will deal with one particular idea. Right? So ideas need not be mixed into the paragraph. So one paragraph we may use to come up with one particular idea. Right? So unrelated topics or unrelated material need not be grouped together under one paragraph. Also, we need to look for the logical sequence, that whether we are maintaining the logical sequence, right? So we have outlined already our document and accordingly, once again in revision, we need to make sure that whether the logical flow of the document is correct, right? Also, we need to check for conciseness. What it means, conciseness? It means that we need not use some extraneous words or unnecessarily we should not use the extra phrases or clauses. If we are having more than one statements with the same meaning, then try to remove those. Our document should really be very concise. We do not want to repeat the same thing again and again. Right? So remove the redundancy while writing. But make sure while you remove the redundant statements, you are not sacrificing with the clarity of your document. Right? So do not use extra words, phrases or clauses, but make sure that clarity of the document is intact. Also, you need to think of the pace while writing. So pace is the speed at which you present the ideas. So it is writing actually, right? So you should maintain appropriate pace. You should have appropriate speed at which you are presenting the ideas to the reader. It should not happen that in the same paragraph or in the same statement, lots of ideas you are throwing, right? Instead, your goal should be to achieve a pace that fits your audience, your purpose and the context, right? So usually avoid the rapid pace, instead maintain the controlled pace for writing. Further, you need to think of the sentence variety. So under sentence variety, I'll brief you or I'll provide you some hints. Sentences may vary in length. Sentences may vary in structure. Sentences may vary in its complexity. As you are revising your document, you should think of the variety of sentences. It should not be like monotonous kind of a thing. the readers should be enthusiastically reading your document, right? So it should not be the case that your sentences are of similar tone, similar variety, right? It should not happen that your sentences are sounding alike. So with respect to the length of the sentence, I would recommend that do not use big or lengthier statements or sentences. You may use variety of sentence lengths. This makes writing less tedious, right? For example, avoid stringing the sentences together. So avoid stringing number of short independent sentences or clauses together, right? Instead, you should have some small sentences. You can effectively combine short sentences by converting the verbs into adjectives. Right? I may give here few examples for that. Let us consider one example. The statement is like the digital shift indicator failed. It was pulled from the market. See, there are two short sentences. What is the first sentence? The digital shift indicator failed. It was pulled. Other statement is it was pulled from the market. Right? So in the first revision, you have written these two statements like this, short statements. The digital shift indicator failed. It was pulled from the market. You may think of the revision like you may convert it like the failed digital shift indicator was pulled from the market, right? So in some situations, instead of writing such kind of two small statements, you may think of combining these two statements into one, like the failed digital shift indicator was pulled from the market. Short sentences are good for emphatic or like memorable statements, right? Whereas long sentences are good for detailed explanations or descriptions. So depending upon whatever you are trying to write, use either short or long sentences. Right? Now, next thing is check for clarity. Check if there is any ambiguity. Check if there are any logical errors, or check for the voice. Right? So all those are the important guidelines while writing or while revising your document. You have written your document, but what is important is the revision, so that your document is more and more effective for the user. Check for ethics, check for any biased language, check for plagiarism. So I have already talked about plagiarism. So once again, whenever you are revising your document, check for whether all the references are being cited properly. Check whether appropriate credit is being given to the respective documents or the authors. Eliminate if there are any problems with the grammar. So your document should be grammatically correct. So you check for grammatical errors. You check for the punctuations, abbreviations, spellings, and so on. So one important guideline is once you are ready with your document, give your document to a third person for review. So that review from the third person is really very important, right? So accept those comments, remarks, and once again, accordingly, you revise your document. So these steps you need to perform repeatedly, and finally you come up with the effective write-up or effective document, right? So I hope you must have understood all those steps towards successful writing, and you should undergo these steps whenever you come up with a technical document. I hope the steps are clear. If you have any doubts, please let me know. Whenever practically we are going to write our document, say for example, the project proposal or the project report, you are supposed to apply everything that we are learning. Okay, so let's conclude today's session. Thank you.